Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will call this meeting to order. At this time, is there any public comment that is not on the posted agenda? Any comment that not on the agenda? You have any, Robin?
No, I don't have. These are for the CSO.
Okay. I will close public comment then and go to the approval of the action minutes.
I have to abstain.
Yeah, Fred was absent.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. As long as you read them? Okay.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to read them.
I don't even have a copy.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. In your second page there.
You guys can look at it.
This was our back and forth vote.
Oh, yeah.
This is when Paul got mad. This is when Fred got mad. This is
Yeah.
when Peyton got mad. This is when...
I wasn't here.
Okay,
Oh.
go.
I'm going to ask the
Robin's
complete
gonna take
review.
Wait till she gets back. She is going to, I got to read that script.
Okay.
Yep.
Forgot my script, so Robin has to print it. We got people, I need to read it.
Do you remember...
I could at least summarize it. Yeah.
Do you remember what this part meant? This is the pool standards. To keep the existing 100-foot distance from the water's edge of the pool. What did that mean?
Well, remember the proposed, they were
What's to have it
proposing
be?
20 feet. They were proposing 20 feet from the pole.
And we said,
We said no, we'll leave it as is, which would be 150.
keep the existing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything looks like it's in order.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It was
I think I'm good with what it reads there.
it was a solution looking for a problem.
It was a non-event looking for a problem. Should have been.
Before we approve the action minutes, let me read my script since we have members of the audience that will be speaking tonight. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans, and amendments to the zoning ordinance. Allow me to introduce the other board members. To my left is Fred Edwards, Gary Burchett, Paul Moore, and to my right is Chris Doty, Mark Bittner, and Noel Carpenter. The applications will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating more than $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and have not timely filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak on your behalf. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and notices have been mailed to property owners affected by the zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all applicants and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless required to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. Okay, Robin? Action minutes.
July 22nd, 2015.
Open up for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the action minutes as submitted.
Second?
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, it's unanimous. Robin?
Okay. The next item is RZ 15-14, U 15-04, BC 15-03, 3503, and 3505 Bethany Bend by Wisdarium LLC to rezone from ONI and AG1 to ONI and a use permit for a private school, to expand the existing school from 2,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet for up to 150 students, and to request a two-part concurrent variance. 1, to reduce the 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback to a 20-foot landscape strip along the north property line, and 2, to reduce a 100-foot setback for recreation areas to 20 feet along the north property line. This item was deferred at the July 22nd meeting to allow time for correction of advertising, which that was done. Since that time, it was discovered that the applicant did not conduct their public participation meeting prior to the Planning Commission, and therefore, based on advice from the city attorney recommending deferral until which time they can hold their public participation meeting, which I've already received, information, and they've already mailed out their notice. I believe it'll be after Labor Day. And therefore, staff is recommending deferral to the September 23rd meeting.
Is there any public comment for that?
Is it anybody out here for public comment? Okay, on this item?
For this one.
No? Okay.
All right.
Just want to make sure.
Close public comment and open up for a motion.
I move we defer RZ 15-14, U 15-04, BC 15-03 to the next scheduled Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
Okay.
Next one, Robin.
So the next item is RZ 15-15 to amend the rural view shed within the rural Milton overlay for single-family type uses. This item had been deferred from your July meeting to allow time for further discussion by the City Council on the conservation subdivision ordinance. And since that time, we've had the meetings and discussed, the council's discussed it, and we bring this back to you for your review and decision.
Any public comment for this?
Not directly yet. Oh, I'm sorry, on the
rural view shed?
rural view shed? Right, yeah,
Okay.
that'll be the next item. Did you want, about which one?
Okay.
That was my staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was deferred, so, yeah, if you wanna speak, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, well, you don't want to speak at all, Jack, before I close it? Okay, I'll close public comment. So it's my understanding, Robin, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is staff working on some AG1, do we have anything to advertise as far as AG1 changes that this is already going to be included in?
Right, correct. So, council had directed staff, we reviewed some, just from a very informal way, some AG1 changes to AG1 district, where we would be beefing it up with the entrances being more rural looking character, also to have the same proposed rural view shed, and some tweaked setbacks depending on where it is adjacent to the exterior roads. And based on that, I'm going to start the cycle of advertising, so for the amended AG1, and that should come to you in October, I believe. So if I start it now, the
Okay.
CVIM would be into September, then you would see it in October, and then it would go to council.
Okay, because, I mean, where I was going with that is, really, I would not want to vote on this right now based on it sounds like coming down the pipe, this is going to be included in a major
Amended, yeah.
change. And so that's kind of where I would just say, yes, to withdraw it or defer it, I don't know, whatever the.
Unless there are any, is there anything that you know that's coming before you, Robin, in terms of platted
Well,
plans that might need this to?
I mean, it's not that we're getting rid of it all, we're just, if you so choose to withdraw it, it's just the withdrawal of the red changes. And it's not that we would get rid of the rural view shed altogether, it's just doing that
Enhancement.
increased rural
Mhm.
view shed, so. We'll still have a view shed, it just would be 60 feet.
Right.
With the 40-foot and then the 20-foot improvement setback where you can grade for septic. So we're still gonna have a view shed, it just won't be at that
Right.
larger.
But there are no new subdivisions that you think are going to be cut in between now and October that may need us to address the small small II.
Oh, I see, the platted, that's another option you could go down, is to go ahead and approve it until we have the updated AG1. But I will say that we work very closely with the applicants with the entrances already.
Right.
We have people coming in and we ask, a lot of it has to do with the fencing anyway.
Right.
And we say, okay, let's reconsider this, and we work with them to design the entrances. So it's really up to you. I mean, we really do try to make it as rural looking as possible, as pretty please, kind of.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that is an option that you could approve this, but it's still, I guess it would go to council in September if you so choose to approve
Yeah.
it without the dimension changing.
Right.
You know where I stand on this.
I know you do.
Yeah, I know. I know where you are, so.
But this part's different than the rest. If we were to strip out the additional setback part, I could live with that tonight.
But you want to increase it 40 to 75?
No, I'm suggesting leave that
wait.
alone
Oh,
as
okay.
it
Don't
exists.
Just
Don't change
approve.
anything with
It's
regards
just
to
the
that
entrance.
today. But consider
Okay,
adopting
The entrance.
the entrance
I can go with that.
condition tonight.
I can go with that.
Because that's something that I think, guys, if you don't get a chance to redo that,
I can go
Right.
with that.
And as one that was most opposed to it last time, I can go along with that too.
yeah.
Yeah. As long as we're not changing the
Yeah.
Footage.
undisturbed buffer part,
Yeah.
then I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with part 2.
Okay.
All right, so
Any
if we
other
don't need a lot of debate, I'll make a motion.
I know Noel's chewing over there.
I'm good.
All right.
Okay. When I make a motion that we accept that we make the following changes to section 64-1141, single-family type uses under landscaping rural view shed, that we, in section, or point A, do not at this point make any changes to the undisturbed buffer and additional improvement setback, that we leave those as currently written by the city ordinance, and that we do accept the small I and double I as conditions that are changed per staff's text.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, it's unanimous.
I have the item.
Great, thanks, guys.
With those changes.
Good point.
The next item is under a courtesy review. This was requested by the city council at last week's Thursday work session. They've asked the planning commission to do a courtesy review of the conservation subdivision ordinance, chapter 50, article 5 of the city code. So just, and if anybody else wants to make comments, I have 2 cards right now, but I'd be happy to take. Okay, you get them. Okay.
All right, would you maybe give us a report base, because this is much,
So what happened
Okay.
since Thursday was that,
or can you say what happened since our meeting?
since the last.
Yeah,
Okay, if I can keep.
I know, sorry.
Since the last meeting.
I know, but I think other
Maybe
commissioners
Chris can
don't.
assist me in
Okay.
the sequence of things, and then I can say what's in this actual document.
That sounds like a handoff. How about that?
I know,
Exactly what
Hey,
that's why he's here.
city council hands it off.
So since your last meeting, I'm not exactly sure when that was. I can bring you up to speed as to what's happened since this last week, when the ordinance returned to the mayor and council for their consideration. And it returned in the form of a work session, a special called work session last Thursday night. When it appeared on their agenda, they deferred it to a special called meeting so that they could handle it just by itself. We had presentation by the consultant, as well as presentation by staff, and in the end tried to build consensus amongst the mayor and council around what seemed to be some core topics that they were building consensus around that they believed in. One of those was, it's captured in the red line thing, that there was some reference to buffer subdivisions that was removed.
I mean, I can review what.
And you'll get to that here in just a second as to what's happened. There's some changes also that exist in the ordinance as a result of the city attorney review. His belief at this point, and I think it's my belief, I think it becomes his belief, is that he would rather this conservation subdivision ordinance say, if in fact it adopts at some point, that it is the design standard in all zoning designations where conservation subdivision is an option. Rather than delineating AG1, R1, and R2 in a conservation subdivision ordinance, we have other zoning designations in that. So his preference was then try to commingle in a subdivision code references to zoning designations. To go ahead and modify, and you'll see why all these other zoning designations are added, to say this is the design if it happens, and then we're going to have to open up the AG1, the R1, the R2, the R3, R4, and on, and decide whether or not conservation subdivision should be an option in that zoning designation. And from a lawyer's standpoint, that cleans up the crossed lines between something that would appear in the zoning code and something that appears in a subdivision ordinance. So when you see those changes, those were city attorney changes. I think that there was some desire there to send it back to the planning commission to get your feedback on what appears to be a substantially modified ordinance from the one that you, as a group, looked at in the first place, and to provide some feedback back to them. There was consensus built about the removal of the buffer subdivisions. There was not consensus built at the meeting around whether or not in conservation subdivision, to the extent that it is allowed, whether or not the density is 1 unit per acre or 1 buildable unit per acre. The whole notion of whether or not the percolation test is required as a form of establishing base density. Kind of was very split on that, and I couldn't get to a consensus point. I'd really like this planning commission to weigh in on that one topic for the council's benefit tonight, because that is kind of a fairly specifically as to what might have happened on Thursday night last week, I could certainly go get my notes, but that's kind of a high-level summary. This ordinance is back for your consideration as a courtesy review. We appreciate you taking the time to do it in the normal course of getting together, and you stand ready to answer questions or provide input. Look forward to your discussion.
All right. How many public comment cards we have?
None of that was recorded. How about that?
Hey, lucky you.
I'm sure it did,
Okay.
7.
7. Okay. So let's just do 3 like we did last time. 3 minutes per
Okay.
individual.
Right. I do have a question. I see that we have Heather Creran and Tony Odetta. You all had sent something in the email, so I don't need to read that since you're here. You could read it, that would be good, and we'll ask, and we will share how much time. Okay. Thank you. So the first speaker is Philip Busman.
I just want to be clear, Mr. Chair, for purposes of this public comment, that to the extent we are reading comments into the record on behalf of an individual, that will go towards their time that you're allowing per person.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Fair enough.
Going here,
Yes, sir. Just
3 minutes?
name and address. Yes, sir.
I'll have it up here. so-
Oh, you have it up there too? Okay. Philip Bushman, 15620 Thompson Road. My wife Mary and I have been residents of Milton since 1983. We purchased a small property out on Thompson Road. We had the good fortune of living next to Ralph Haynes, who had a 55-acre plot for 25 years. He recently sold that property to Howard Carson, who's getting ready to develop it. And I guess I'm here tonight just to say that I think I dodged a hell of a bullet, because Mr. Carson is following doing it the right way, following all the Ag 1 requirements, to my knowledge, and has applied for his land disturbance permit, which will be granted when the moratorium lifts, I assume. The prospect of living next door to a conservation subdivision, based on our view, and where all those houses would have ended up, depending on a different developer getting that property, is pretty horrifying to us. To me, when we sat here a year ago in June, I believe it was, the idea of a conservation subdivision, I can't remember the speaker's name, he came from Pennsylvania, but it was a great sell. It was all this green space that was permanently deeded over to never be developed as part of the development. And I guess what I'm seeing in this document, in the CSO as proposed, is not about conservation. It's about trying to pencil in a few more lots into a given space and really playing with the definition of green space. And I guess that's what really gets us going more than anything else. When a tennis court can be green space, I mean, come on. We're trying to have a small farm. The city of Milton has a picture of my barn and my sheep at the city library. Bob Meyer said in the book that he signed, Farms in Milton, keep the sheep. It would have been really hard to keep the sheep next to a conservation subdivision. So that's it. I appreciate you guys and what you're doing and the direction that you're taking.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ralph Smith.
Shoot. No.
I think with the limited number of people we have here, give them some latitude and don't mind
Let
limiting
'em roll.
3
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, and let's do
You
it.
saw me coming, you know that I talk a lot.
I have no
I
idea.
just-
I think, does Noel know that? Oh, you
Good
do?
evening,
Oh,
Ralph
okay.
Smith, 15735 Canterbury Chase, here in the lovely city of Milton. My wife and young girls at that time moved into Milton. We actually put signs out for the incorporation of Milton. We knocked on doors, we gathered people. We really rallied for Milton to get on the map. Two simple factors. We love the rural community, but yet we also love the conveniences. We also really enjoyed the fact that we were looking at maybe one house per acre was kind of the general consensus at the time. Understanding that we moved from California, I grew up in the Silicon Valley. I used to walk the fields, walk amongst the orchards there. Beautiful, green, lovely place, truly lovely. If anyone's been back there lately, it's turning into a concrete jungle. I moved my 2 little girls here. We moved our family, extended family here, and we're not feeling comfortable that that this is going the right direction. Playing with green space and saying that's going to take care of high density, it's not going to work. I've been through it in California. They claimed they were going to make green space available, but be comfortable, let us do the density. Pretty soon, family members of mine had to hook up to the sewer at personal expense. That you could literally touch one house and touch the other. That's how dense it got in what used to be a very very sparsely populated area. So I leave the mechanics to the esteemed team here, but please understand, I share the opinion of many. Most of the folks in my subdivision agree. We are very worried about this new guideline. It's fraught with peril, and there's a lot of ins and outs. So appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Heather Creran, and I apologize for the pronunciation if it's not correct. Okay, well, I'll start.
Don't worry about the clock. We only
Just
got
keep going. Okay, good. So Heather Creran, 325 Taylor Glen Drive in Milton. And again, thank you very much for giving us a chance to comment. I just want to echo some of the comments that I think his name is Ralph just made. Having moved from Southern California, where we lived in a conservation subdivision, I can tell this committee it is not rural. It does not preserve the beauty here of Milton and the character here of Milton. It's high-density housing. I mean, literally, if not me, but if Shaquille O'Neal came to our house, he could touch my house and the house next door. So I think the conservation subdivision ordinance is just simply not going to work. And I part of it I wonder is why it keeps going from the Planning Commission to the council and back. I don't believe there's a way to make it work. Again, it's not rural; it's urban. This would present 4 houses per acre and would ruin the beauty of Milton. And I think this group, I appreciate you taking the time to do what you do, and I think you take seriously that you're stewards of this beautiful community. And this subdivision would turn that on its ear and would really irrevocably ruin the beauty of Milton. And we came here and decided to move here and not Alpharetta or Johns Creek or some of the others because of how beautiful and unique it is. And I hope this will die a quick death, and we can look to other ways if there are concerns about it to preserve the unique qualities here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Tony Oteta. Apologize for.
It's okay. My name is my problem.
There you go.
Okay.
So I'd like to just
So you take
follow-
your name and address real quick.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
Tony Otita, and it is 325 Taylor Glen Drive.
Okay, thank you.
So I've been following this, and I agree with some of the things that have been said also, that it seems that this concept is, you could rewrite it 1,000 times. It's not going to work. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. And maybe somebody on the Planning Commission can enlighten me. Why, from what I understand at least, you folks have recommended to the City Council that they not vote for this conservation subdivision, and then the City Council sends it back to the Planning Commission, and it gets rewritten, and it goes back to the City Council, and it goes back to you. There's something here that this doesn't pass the common sense test. Why does this continue to be this cycle of recycling a bad idea? Could somebody explain that to me?
Well, I don't have that answer, to be honest with you, and we don't really engage in a question and answer at this point in time. We will have that discussion after public comments close, but I don't have that answer. I'm sorry. I don't know. We gave council a 7-0 vote on the first time, and they gave it back to us for what the city manager said, based on it being a new revised ordinance, I guess, a change.
Okay, but I've read those changes. As I say, the minutia of this, and I guess this will be my statement. It's not in the details. It's the concept itself that I don't think will ever be workable. So I hope between the city council and the planning commission that you guys can find a way to stop this cycle of it's never ending and it's never going to be resolved, in my opinion. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the work you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Jack Linden.
Good evening. My name is Jack Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road here in Milton. I just have a couple of brief comments. I would like to point out that the major change to this ordinance compared to the first two versions was the suggestion to eliminate the buffer design. And basically the buffer design was the attempt by the consultant to make changes to regular 1 acre zoning as an option to conservation subdivision design. So this plan that you see is what we call an option plan. And the movement now is to say, let's make changes to 1 acre zoning, but do it somewhere else in the ordinance. I guess the current thinking is to make it under AG1. Wherever it is, it really isn't much different than what this is. At least conceivably the changes that are going to be made to AG1, this AG1 modified, could be similar to the changes that are here, and that's why the suggestion was made to take it out of here. My point is this. When I first started asking that a conservation subdivision ordinance be suggested and passed in Milton, I was really in favor of it being the way that all subdivisions are designed from here on out. I've listened to lots of people and I've come to the conclusion that it really would work better if we allowed conservation subdivision design on land where it is appropriate. And then where it doesn't seem to fit the topography, the landscape, that sort of thing, to allow these other types of approaches. So I think this is a good change, and we're still going to be working on what kind of changes we make to AG1 developments and others. I know, I guess we should call it 1 acre development, and hopefully those will be good changes. But I would certainly suggest and hope that you recommend to City Council, based on this new version, that at least if conservation subdivision designs be allowed as an option, which is what this does. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Robert Speck.
Spade. That was too easy.
Okay.
Hi, Rob Spee at 14748 Taylor Valley Way. So I moved my family here from a high-density zone down in Florida about 6 years ago. And over the last 6 years, up until last week, I'd attended one city meeting, just busy with my life and everything else. But when I started reading and hearing about the plans for this conservation subdivision, I knew it was something that I had to get more involved with and understanding of what the plans were. After attending Thursday night's meeting and really learning more details and hearing more about it, I'm even more frightened by what's being proposed. And my view, and I know I share by my wife and many in our community and many others, the meeting last Thursday, I think everyone who stood up and spoke was speaking against the conservation subdivision. And our fear, my fear and many others' fear, is that this high-density zoning that it brings in, or high-density capability for building, perhaps it's the same number of homes on a property, but in much higher density. There's just a lot of faults with that, and it is not going to preserve the rural character that most of us came here for. So I would hope that you as a planning commission and that the city council will ultimately kill this. I don't know why it's happening across the country. I have a friend in South Carolina. The city's trying to do the exact same thing, and people are trying to fight it. I don't have a problem with a conservation subdivision that offers 3-acre lots. That sounds great. That's more in keeping of what we're trying to do here. But something that's going to place homes in smaller than 1-acre lots, I think, is just totally against what we're trying to do here. I think I read through the revised changes to the AG1, and I think that is another way to accomplish some of the things that we're trying to accomplish in terms of preserving the rural character. The proposed amendments or changes were suggested only on lots greater than 20 acres. I'm not sure why. I think we could just have one new revised AG1 that applies to lots of all sizes that perhaps increase some of the rural buffer and different things like that. That will help preserve more of the rural character. But again, my view is that these conservation subdivisions with higher densities just has no place in Milton.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next speaker is Kim Horn.
Hi, my name is Kim Horn. I'm at 415 Way Glencourt. And once again, thank you for your service in allowing us to speak tonight. And reading through the revised ordinance last week and then looking at it again this week before this meeting, my comments are pretty much echoing what you've heard from the majority of the people, that the CSO option should not be a zoning option for Milton. One of the biggest fears that I have with it is that it brings community septic. They talked about it last week. These systems fail. This would be a public health issue, as well as putting the city on the hook for financial responsibility if this happens. And I shouldn't say if this happens, I would say when this happens. They were talking about Tennessee and how they just have, it's happening all over the place. The example that Mr. Bussman talked about, the property next to him, is a perfect example. If that's 70 plus acres or 65 plus acres were developed, AG1, 1 acre, true, density neutral lots, they would have 30 some or 35 homes. If it were to be developed as a CSO, they could have 70 homes. That's just a perfect example of why this is truly high density housing under the, under the cover of conservation. One of the other concerns I have that's been talked about is definition of green space. You can't have a sewer system or stormwater runoff or tennis courts, or that's not green space, nor should it be. One of the other areas that concerns me is the inadequate buffers for the homeowners next to, if this were to be developed. They're letting a 50-foot buffer between the next homeowner. That could be a septic field or a septic tank. Nobody wants that 50 feet away from their property line. The side lots are too small. It's just, it's not rural, and it's not what it should be for Milton. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last comment.
Julie's coming.
Next one is Julie Zonner Bailey.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your time. My name is Julie Zonner Bailey. I live at 255 Hickory Flat Road, Milton, Georgia, 2000, not 2000, that would be the year. I live at 3004. I recognize that the intent of this ordinance originally may have been to help preserve the more rural areas of Milton. The negative consequences, however, of the actual draft document before you previously and before you again tonight, and that returning for this courtesy review, does not preserve our rural community. Instead, it exposes us to high-density housing and a multitude of other unintended consequences. I appreciate the opportunity to briefly express my concerns, as many others have expressed both tonight as well as last week's meeting and earlier meetings. I'd like to touch on what those multitude of concerns are. I've stated this previously, and I'll state it again, and of this document, under the purpose itself, it says reducing the perception of density. We don't need to be in the business of reducing perception of density. We should not allow for increased density. This document increases density. We know it, the staff knows it, developers know it, other folks that have worked on it know it, and we need to recognize it. This is about increasing density and trying to pretend that it doesn't. We need to not be in the business of pretending. This increases density. I'll speak about that more in a moment. The public input process, it remains inadequate as addressed within this document. Time frames for signage alerting the public regarding proposed plans, it's insufficient. Advertisements in the paper are not a requirement. There's no required community zoning information meeting. Adjacent landowners are not required to be invited to the developer meetings. Really? I find that impossible to imagine. The time frame between the minimal notification and the actual meetings is not enough time. No advance letters to adjacent landowners would be required. The public involvement process is lacking in so many ways. As somebody that cares very much about transparency, as I know you do, the public input process alone should be a reason for this not to proceed. Let's now talk about density neutrality in the yield plan. Some folks would say this is density neutral. It is not, it never has been, and the legal language does not indicate that it's density neutral. The gentleman that spoke that lives on Thompson Road, and I'm going to repeat it because the math and the science prove that this is not density neutral. 70 acres under AG1 based on percolation tests, soil analysis, the actual slopes of the land, the streams, etc., would only yield, and staff can prove it, I think that they've got the percolation test back behind those doors. I think it yields 30 acres that can be developed, 30 homes on 70 acres, 30 out of 70. Under the CSO, 70 homes on those 70 acres, but a quarter lot. That is high-density housing. It's not density neutral, not now, not ever. And that's just one example. I guarantee we have more examples because the majority of land that's AG1 that would be available for CSO land has poor soils. The percolation tests do not yield one home per acre. It just does not. Again, that alone should be a reason for this not to proceed. We cannot pretend that this is density neutral. It's the furthest thing from density neutrality. And anybody that once said that they supported it indicated that they would only support it if it was density neutral. We've never seen a document that was density neutral. In terms of green space, the current conservation ordinance document before you comprises 50% of the area lots and purports them to be green space. Yet there's no discussion about buildable versus non-buildable land as a component of that 50%. Non-buildable land would have been green space anyway. Steep slopes can't be built on. Stream buffers can't be built on. Floodplain can't be built on. That's non-buildable land that this document claims to be green space. We're not gaining anything with that being allocated as green space. Green space also should not be tennis courts or other pervious surfaces or impervious surfaces. They shouldn't be barns or structures or arenas. That's not green space. A structure is not green space. I don't care if we call it a barn. It's a barn, it's a building. It might have a horse in it, but it's not green space. A horse on a pasture, that's green space, not a barn, not an arena with lights. Buffers, they're not adequate. Adjacent landowners must be protected or this fails. And this fails. A 50% buffer that can be actually reduced to 30% when you use part of the 50% for trails, maybe it reduces it to 40. I think I read that it could reduce to 30. That wouldn't be sufficient. Not for me, not for anybody. Buffers should protect those who would have to otherwise live next to the high-density community septic systems and the quarter-acre lots. Buffers must be wider, they must be undisturbed, and they truly should preclude current landowners who've lived here for very long times. They should be protected from any high-density housing that would be introduced by this document. This document doesn't do it. I don't know the page number, but there's some reference to the fact that the community development director could approve a 150-foot buffer. However, it says that if the land that it would be buffering could ever become a CSO, that 150-foot buffer couldn't be applied. So effectively it says that the 150-foot buffer would never be applied. I live on AG1 land, and sure, if a CSO one day could be, well then the property next to me, which could be a CSO, would never get the 150-foot buffer. So why that language is even there, I'm not sure, because it doesn't accomplish anything. Wastewater treatment systems. This draft introduces large community septic systems into areas of Milton where today they're not permitted. This document would effectively introduce private sewer systems into all parts of Milton. This is private sewer. You know it, I know it, the staff knows it, the community knows it. We can call it a lot of different things. But we always said when we introduced the city to an unincorporated environment, over thousands and thousands of people responded to surveys, and they said, we do not want public sewer. This is the next best thing. It's public sewer called private. What that does is it allows developers and others to bypass the otherwise unnatural or natural constraints that otherwise keep density at bay. Wastewater treatment systems, they do fail. We heard it from the experts last Thursday. We heard it from the EPD back in May and June. And the financial liability to the city and therefore the citizens of Milton is unacceptable. Community septic systems fail. The EPD said so. The experts last week said so. Developers have said, folks that use these, they say they fail. We have to listen to that. We can't ignore it. They do fail. We've had all the experts tell us that they fail. I don't know, but I know little kids sometimes cover their ears and say, no, la, 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 la. We can't do that. The experts are telling us that the systems fail. They fail. I don't want to pay for a failed system, and I don't think other citizens do. High-density lots, quarter-acre lots, 10,000 square foot lots. That's high density. It's high density now. It was high density last week. It'll be high density next week unless we become a community of maybe 8,000 square foot lots. But this document introduces high-density lots, period. The application of this to only or to development that would be 20 acres and above, we've heard developers and the experts say wastewater systems cannot be profitable, and by the way, they fail more often when they're on smaller lots. So to apply this to 20-acre plus parcels would be irresponsible. Trails in the buffer. I love trails. I like trails. I have trails on my property. But to have trails that could be in a buffer that's already inadequate further mitigates the whole point of a buffer. So if we're going to have trails, they surely shouldn't be in the buffer that was supposed to be natural and undisturbed. As I said to you in my letter, I could go on. I won't. There's a lot more detail within this that any individual point would be reason enough not to allow it to proceed. Guys, I'm a conservationist. Some may claim that I'm not. I've been conserving my land for 27 years. I work as a school teacher, and every day I'm paying for the land that I've been conserving for 27 years. I bought my land. It's in a conservation use. I don't want to develop my land, so I'm personally conserving almost 30 acres of land for this community. I have wildlife. I protect the streams. October 17th, probably for the 24th year, I'll be doing Rivers Alive. I'll be cleaning up other people's trash because I care about this community. So anybody that wants to claim I'm not a conservationist, they need to look at my record. I care about this community probably more than just about anybody. And this doesn't protect our community. We can't pretend that it does. It's called a conservation subdivision ordinance, but it doesn't conserve what some people purport that it does. And I just beg you to send this back to the council with the detail and the intelligence that you've given this process thus far. And please don't ignore the many, 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 many citizens that I know have spoken to you, have sent letters. This stuff matters, and I so appreciate the dedication you've given. The fact that you're willing to look at it yet again just says that you guys similarly care about this community. You've given me more than my 3 minutes, and I appreciate that as well. And I just thank you, and I wish that this worked. I wish it worked. In Cherokee County, it didn't work. In California, it didn't work. And so maybe somewhere it does, but not in the current confines of what our city is. I would say in closing that I think enhancing our AG1 development standards is a great idea. I think that's going to come back to you. You'll have a chance to digest that, add to it, expand it. One of the gentlemen this evening spoke, and I would agree with his point, that AG1 standards, if we're going to enhance them, we need to enhance them for all AG1. Otherwise, we're disenfranchising the person that's only got the 19 acres, right? I've got more than 20 acres. I shouldn't be the only one that's having to abide by enhanced standards. Every AG1 landowner should have to if we're going to do that. God bless you and thanks.
Thank you. All right, any more public comment, Robin?
No, there's no more.
All right, I will close public comment and open it up for discussion. I feel like we've done this 5 times now. Who wants to get the ball rolling?
Just to address the one question that was posed by
Tony?
No. Yes, by Tony.
Yep.
I was at the meeting last Thursday, and I will tell you that the mayor and council did their very best to work through what was a difficult document at the time. And there were a couple of us who sat through the pain to the very end, and they actually addressed the couple of us, the planning commission who were there, and gave us a choice. They didn't necessarily plan to give it back to us, but I spoke on my own behalf. I did not speak on behalf of the planning commission, but I said, you know what, we probably, as important as this is to the city, should invite it back one more time with under the premise of a courtesy review. The courtesy review in my mind is very different than us, plowing through point by point, doing some of the work that we've done in the past. I think this is different. I think it's our charge. I will tell you that I think this is the charge, to take a look at this and give them our perspective on it as it's written. I don't know that it's our charge to go back and propose any changes to it. I think that there are things that we probably should note this evening that we have concern about. But I don't think it's our charge to do the kind of work that we've been known to do in the past. When we've had a difficult ordinance or a zoning application come before us, or a rewrite of overlays where we have taken the heavy load of carrying the work to benefit from the hard work that staff had done to bring us a good document to make it even better with the perspective that we share, and then give that work to the mayor and council. I don't think this is that kind of a request this evening. So I just give that as an oversight as to why it's back before us tonight, and ask for your due diligence with the fact that I was the one who said, hey, yeah, we probably wanted to do it.
Fair enough. I know I have my 5 what I call major concerns with this ordinance, and so I didn't know if the best thing to do is to go down the table and get consensus on those concerns that we want to give to City Council, so they know these are the issues with the ordinance that we have at hand. I know I have mine, so if someone wants to start off with their discussion on their issues, or if something's changed and you're in favor of it.
The question I have is there any of the concerns that Noel submitted in his written letter
All the same.
are the same? We're not looking at anything any different, right?
Well, I will say there are some changes in this ordinance that we saw from the prior one, as far as there's an options of estate lots and stuff like that. So I have a couple concerns with that in general, but with what Noel gave on his executive summary at the prior time
Still applies.
still applies, absolutely.
So as far as us beating it to death again, I don't see any reason the concerns that were initially raised, and you're saying you have a couple of additional ones. I mean, I think what Noel submitted still holds true. And I don't have any, in my opinion, that should be brought up at this point. I don't know if anyone else does.
I would, if you don't mind, let me suggest another plan of action, is that maybe ask the 7 of us, either by group response or by individual response, do we or don't we support what we have in front of us? We've already said no before.
Yeah.
I think Gary just now very eloquently said that we most likely all are in the same opinion we were before, and maybe even with even greater concern. I have some greater concern about some key points too.
I agree.
But so I'm kind of shedding light on where I would likely cast a vote, but maybe not necessarily as a vote, but but get a perspective as to where we stand, and then decide what to do with it.
Right. I mean, I know personally my opinion hasn't changed.
No, in fact, I sat down and went through this again most of today, and found even an additional 7 items, of which I was concerned about. And again, to go through all these and repeat them, the point, the point about 10 feet from a side yard is just, ridiculous. And that was one which stood out again this time. But there were others which, and it may be, I don't have the page, that it says that the minimum would be 20 feet. So this may be something that we need to check into. Is it 10 or is it 20? Because in one place it says it's 20 feet apart, and in another it says it's 10 under the cottage. But again, not drag this out, but there's many more that came to light after I reread this, that I stand on our previous vote.
In theory, I'm in favor of a conservation subdivision. I think if it's done right, it's a good thing to have within our city. One of the things that we need to look at as a city is that we need to expand our tax base to support the services that everybody in this community want. And the only way we can do that is through growth. And we're going to have growth. And we've relied on the AG1, and to prevent destruction of the rural view shed, but it hasn't worked. So, but the concerns that this committee has raised with this document itself, they need to be addressed before I can go along with it too.
You can say my couple new ones? I have a couple new ones.
Sure.
So I noticed it had the estate lot option on there, and it sounds good, but when you read it, it forces someone to put 50% of their land in a conservation easement. And I'm under the theory that we want estate lots. We want 3-acre lots. And so why would we put any restrictions on those? I would think it'd be the opposite. So that was new that we didn't see. I can go on with the yield plan. I think that's an absolutely that if they don't require soil tests, you're going to get more homes. Plain and simple. It's a huge incentive to develop the way it is now in a CSO than it would be in an AG1. So I think the yield plan's huge. I think allowing I guess what wasn't brought up tonight, but it's always been brought up, is the liability of the city. If we have multiple community septic systems, I was treasurer of my HOA, and I know how those books are run, and they aren't the best. And I don't want the city to have to go in and take over septic systems. So, that's 3 things. And also, this document that we see before us doesn't allow by right development, and I believe in by right development. I believe in by right development within AG1, keeping our minimum 1 acres, and we can enhance AG1 to do the by right development, but this document doesn't allow that. So those are some of my issues just off the top of my head. I won't go into everything else that Noel wrote at the prior meeting.
I'll take my 2-second shot at this as well. I stand with my vote from before as well. The part that I find the 2 parts I find most troubling in this are the fact that there is no yield measure that takes into consideration what was intended to be a density neutral plan, and this is not that. This is going to produce higher density. If we don't have to have the soil sample to what has been historically a protection that's kept us as rural as we've got, we are absolutely going the wrong direction with this as it's currently written. Regardless of whether we can fix all the other little nuances in here, the advertisement, the engagement of the community, the engagement of the immediate neighbors, all of which are lessened requirements than we have today under current AG1 planning, which I think are a travesty that we potentially reduce those requirements and by the way it's written, have the community less engaged and have less involvement in the process when there are changes being made to their properties immediately adjacent to them. Even if we were to fix all of those things, the trump card for me on all of this is community septic, or community sewer is what it really is. It needs to be called sewer because that's what it is. It's putting a collection of homes on a collection package plant, and we're basically inviting mini sewer to Milton, and we have never as a city supported that. We have council members and our mayor who ran their campaigns and were elected by the community, and we granted them our trust by our vote that said we don't want that, and to now introduce this could not be any further from what they all stood for. So that's the absolute trump card for me, even if we were to fix everything else. Thanks.
Anything else? Mark?
I like the concept, but haven't addressed the issues, and I'm going the same way I went last month.
Speak now, forever hold your peace, Chris.
I have nothing else extra to add.
All right, you're good.
Echo
I
what
like
you
that.
guys have said,
All right.
so.
No?
All right. I'm not going to go into all the wheres and whys of how we've gotten to where we are today, but I've prepared a statement because I want to make sure. I believe that it's critical that this gets in there exactly as written. In addition to the previous executive summary that we've done, this is, by the way, this is my statement, so it's not the statement of the Planning Commission, and everybody's free to voice your own opinion, but here's mine. We've heard many arguments both for and against conservation subdivisions and the revised version of the proposed conservation subdivision ordinance before us tonight. The vision of the city is well known. Milton is a distinctive community embracing small town life and heritage while preserving and enhancing our rural character. It has become clear during this 2-year consideration of conservation subdivisions that the community supports the enhancement and preservation of our rural character with a primary focus on preserving and enhancing our rural viewshed. And one could hardly argue with the intent of the numerous beneficial and well-meaning stipulations listed in Section 50-138 of the proposed conservation subdivision ordinance. And so I want to address the issue from a different perspective, one that I believe needs to be considered now as well as during the coming debates over our possible AG1 enhancements. For I believe that the manner in which the preservation currently being considered is accomplished is at least as important as what is accomplished in that process. My argument stems from the basic position that we should not allow for, nor should we be promoting the erosion of our citizens' personal liberties and property rights afforded to them in the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which partially states, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." Milton is largely comprised of successful, free-thinking, independent, entrepreneurial property owners. For the most part, the rural lands from which the rural viewshed are derived are privately held, individually owned properties of the people that make up the citizenry of Milton. And I believe that we do not have the legal right nor the moral authority to force those property owners to cooperate with us on accomplishing the conservation objectives of this city. Section 50-137 of the CSO before us defines estate lots as those of which 50% of the lot area is protected by a conservation easement. Section 50-139B states, in all AG1 subdivisions, conservation subdivision is the preferred method. And in B1 it says, lands held in conservation easements or other like legal instruments shall constitute a minimum of 50% of the tract proposed for subdivision. Section 50-146B1 states, green space shall be protected in perpetuity, which shall be in permanent conservation easement. The research and the Planning Commission's previous examinations has shown that concerns from both sides of the conservation easement and property rights debate remain unabated. Essentially, we do not know the unintended consequences of the implementation of these conservation subdivisions within our city. Therefore, I do not believe that our city should be suggesting to our citizens that conservation subdivisions are the preferred method of subdivision when this method requires these citizens to permanently give away their property rights and those property rights of their future generations. If we believe that the citizens are in support of preserving the rural viewshed, then we should call for a bond referendum. Let those in favor make their arguments to the citizens, and then let the citizens vote on whether or not they are in support of purchasing these properties from their rightful owners. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
Thank you.
So I guess in conclusion, what I would like, since I guess we've kind of laid everything out on the record and everything, I would like to have some sort of draft, kind of like your executive summary part 2, Noel, but I would like to at least get all of these issues on the table in written form for Kathy to give to council. Is that something that could be done, Robin? I mean, I wouldn't say for you, maybe I could go through it and let all the commissioners look at what I would kind of suggest, and you could give that to them. Would that be okay? Because I think they gave it to us because I guess they wanted a third look, fourth look, and well, we're going to give it to them, and I want them to know all of our concerns. And I think it'd be good for their official packet. Does that sound okay?
Can I make one suggestion? If we are going to make a motion and we're going to vote,
yeah, we don't.
okay. But what I would like to do is I would like to one thing we should decide on, if by chance that the council is going to approve this, can we have a motion to where that the soil testing must be made part of any single thing that moves forward?
That's a no-brainer. I mean, in my book, that's a.
You could reflect that in your summary to them.
Okay, because it's unbelievable.
But before I submit anything,
We're not required to vote, but we might choose to vote, to make a statement.
Well, I think
True.
it's pretty clear that you're all unanimous on that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can vote if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think.
you want to vote on the entire thing or just on the perk test? I mean, to me, it's going to be the same. You're going to get a 7-0, 7-0
I think
on both.
you should put that down. You
All right,
should
let's
make that-
let's go ahead and vote on what we have in front of us. Open up for a motion for the ordinance itself,
As written.
as written.
I move we deny section 50-137, Article 5, Conservation Subdivision Ordinance, and remove it as a tool for the city of Milton.
All right, a motion. You have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, with that being said, I would like to draft some stuff to give to staff, and then I'll let y'all review it, and if any changes to be made, we'll make changes and give it to them. All right?
Great.
Anything else? All right, leave it for motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? It's unanimous. Oh, sure.
See if I'm misunderstanding what they were saying.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's
No.
why Kathy came
It
in
was
to go
saying
back and
here
get a
that
meeting.
the
No,
side
no.
yards
You gotta
on the
finish it up,
interior
man.
lots
I was
would
gonna
be
say, that's
10
my fault.
feet apart.
I don't know where the minutes.
Right?
are.
Yeah.